I feel goofy. Thank you for your support.
Kevin, can you remind us if we need to approve the minutes for the last meeting?
No, not for the subcommittee meetings.
Okay.
I was just going to open up the agenda for today.
If you are on Basecamp, if you go to the survey writing committee, the 10/9/24 meeting, I believe all of the documents are in that folder. It might be easier to find them that way.
Okay, thank you. I know I went to the what's in our invite, so I'll go to Basecamp.
Yeah, either way, yeah. Okay. And I'm wondering where the definition of sexual misconduct came from. It's on mine, it shows that I posted it, but I know that I did not. I'm wondering if folks could talk about maybe who posted that.
I posted a document said definition of sexual misconduct, and then within the document I showed where I got those definitions from. One from I just showed like, okay, this is what the statute said, and then I put the other definitions and where I got it from.
Thank you so much.
Martina,
I know.
Okay, go ahead.
I'm sorry. No. I was going to say, Martina is here from the language subcommittee to talk about some of these definitions. I appreciate you doing that. It's a ton of work. I love it. I'm wondering if we can maybe we should use the statutory definition of sexual misconduct and just say, yes, that's our definition as in statute. And then there is a statutory definition for sexual harassment that all of the schools are required to adopt. And I wonder if we want to use that one. I can find that text and put it in the chat if that would be helpful.
Thank you, Rowan.
I got it in there, Rowan.
Oh, thank you so much. Okay, great.
I think the reason why I did that, because I think we were going to, because remember in the definition, you said the definitions had other words that may need to be defined. So I think you said create a document with that, and we were going to work on the definitions together, and also the other words that had to be defined, like coercion and whatever, coercive, and some other things.
Yeah, for sure. I think language is working on that too. Martina, do you want to talk about what the language subcommittee talked about this morning?
Yeah, absolutely. So, since we're kind of tasked with doing some of this work around the language that we're going to use, both internally to help guide us as a committee and also communicate the work that we have done, and then also in the survey itself, right? Which Rowan did a really good job this morning of helping me like really understand how to differentiate those in my mind. We've been working on like something of a glossary, if that makes sense. Again, that would be something that would be more internal, so something that would be useful for us as a collective as we're moving forward, but would perhaps not be like linked exactly in the survey because it's a little bit of a different process. And we might also be able to use that in communication externally when we're like explaining to partners why we did what we did, or explaining to the universities how they should understand these concepts. So we've been working on, let's see, the terms that we've been working on are, this morning we talked about sexual harassment, sexual violence, and sexual exploitation, as well as consent more broadly. And then Jenna, who's a member of the committee but couldn't join us this morning, is also working on intimate partner violence. So hopefully we'll have some definitions of all of those. Alongside that, I'm working on a document that gives some trauma-informed principles specifically related to talking about sex, sexuality, and sexual violence, and that we can use for some of the like specific language issues, like do we want to use the term survivor, victim, person who's experienced violence, right? Like those kinds of bigger concepts. Is that a good summary, Rowan? Did I miss anything?
Yeah, no, I think you did a really good job. We did have some draft language around coercion, and I think what it is the language committee is going. I think where it might work best is if the language committee shares what they've been talking about, and then also reviews the documents that the survey writing committee is putting together, and make maybe some suggestions on wording there. One of the things that I pointed out this morning is that we want to have these definitions, not because we're going to put them in the survey, because we won't. We won't say, have you experienced sexual violence? We'll say, have you experienced sexual contact without your consent, or when you couldn't say no, right? We'll say something like that. But when we give this information to the schools, we need to be able to say something like, questions 7 through 13 refer to things that meet this definition of sexual violence. So does that make sense? And then when they're doing their analysis, they can say, we're looking at questions 7 through 13. Those are that's the sexual violence section, and this is what we found. So it'll be behaviorally specific definitions within the survey, but they will use the titles of sexual violence and intimate partner violence and stalking in our analysis and our implementation guidelines.
Rowan, I so appreciate you naming that, because I know I was a little concerned with readability. So
Yeah.
that's really helpful.
Yeah.
Context. Thank you.
Yeah, I found that to be a really important, it like sort of freed us a little bit from some of our concerns about, how are we creating language that is inclusive or exclusive of different people's experiences? And knowing that the language that we use for participants is going to be different from the language that is relevant to the end user university administrators who are doing data analysis, I think really helps us kind of separate that in our mind. And I definitely felt a lot less anxiety after we had that conversation. So I hope you all can too.
At this point, then, what would our next steps be? Do we still need to review the definitions? If it sounds like we can share it maybe and get feedback as a next step? Did I hear that correctly? Martina, does that sound okay with you if we go ahead and share what we have?
Yeah,
And then,
I'm along for the ride here. So y'all do whatever you think is right, and I'll pipe in with certainly more opinions that are necessary.
I love that. I just want to avoid duplication. I'm kind of worried we're both doing a little bit of the same work right now with that glossary. So if you all it sounds like you all are kind of deep in that. Would everyone on this committee feel okay with if we take a step back then? Is that appropriate? And then see what you all, and then give you what we have completed and then get that feedback?
Yes, I agree.
Okay, so that would mean, just to be clear, that would mean sharing this document that you have right now that has those definitions that Adea put together with the language subcommittee and asking for their feedback on it. And then the next time you meet, you can use that feedback to change them in the way that you want. You'll have the final say on that, but the language subcommittee can use their expertise in that way. Okay.
Okay, so, well, if we're using the definition from the statute, and I thought the language subcommittee is coming up with definitions as well, then are we supposed to come up with definitions, or we just adopt what the language subcommittee and what the statute says?
I think what you can do, because you have come up with, you've got that base document that you uploaded. If you share that with the language subcommittee, they can make comments on it for you and then send it back to you with those comments. And then you can incorporate what makes sense to you. And then you can use that definition. So for example, for the definition of sexual harassment that's in the statute, like that's in the statute, the definition of sexual misconduct are in statute. The other terms really aren't defined by statute in the way that they would apply to institutions of higher education. So those
Okay.
you're gonna, you know, like we were talking this morning about sexual exploitation, right? Like how broad that is. And I think what's important is that there's a shared understanding of what the definitions are, and we're able to capture everyone's experience. So
Okay.
we were using an example of someone who, and I'm going to use some explicit language, folks. I just want to give heads up. But for example, we want to capture all of the experiences that someone might have. If there's a situation where there's someone who is masturbating really loudly in a shared dormitory bathroom, where would that fall, right? Like how, like that could be a really disturbing experience. There's definitely a sexual component, but what area of misconduct would that fall under, right? And so we want to be able to not necessarily define that as, you know, one person might have experienced that as sexual violence, and another person might have experienced that as harassment, and someone else could have experienced it as you know, voyeurism or exhibitionism. It's not as important, I think, that we have a very legal definition for what that would be, or you know, which policy it would violate, as much as we write the questions so that those experiences get caught and the person has the opportunity to share them.
Yeah.
Is that?
Mhm.
I think that's a wonderful way of explaining that, and much more
Yes, thank you.
coherent than our actual discussion this morning, where we went around and around and you had to explain it to me 10 times. But I think that's like the really critical thing, right? Ultimately, every person who's experiencing this gets to define it for themselves. So the questions will let them do that definition for themselves rather than us trying to fit their experience into some arbitrary box. But on the back end, then we want to know what the boxes are.
Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah. Because the schools are going to need to be able to say these kinds of experiences that we, you know, that fall under sexual exploitation were experienced by this many people, right? Or something like that. So, and that will allow you to meet your statutory requirement, which is that you have questions that ask about sexual misconduct, which is statutorily defined.
Okay, thank you for better explaining that. Thank you.
Are we ready to
Is-
move on? Oh,
Sorry, just
no,
one
please.
question. I'm just thinking about, I think structuring the questions in that way is really, intentional and helpful. And I'm also thinking about the folks that, still might be missed and might not feel quite like their experiences fall into any of those categories. And is there a way for us to have a section dedicated to that? I think that could be useful in understanding how maybe things need to be adapted in the future, or what might be missing, or like how many folks aren't identifying with those things. Is there a way to, I know that's very vague, right? But is there a way to sort of incorporate a section that's dedicated to that? Even if it's like a really open-ended, or sort of like, oh, I felt like I experienced something really problematic, but I don't feel like it fits in any of these categories or instances.
Lindsay, that's a great suggestion. Have we seen something like that in any of the other surveys that we have reviewed?
I don't know that we've seen, Lindsay, I absolutely love the way you framed that. And I don't know that we have seen that, Caroline, but I wonder if one way to ask it might be, we asked about a bunch of different experiences that you may have had, but we recognize that we may not be asking about something that happened to you. Have you had an experience that you consider to be, you know, and we'll have to figure out how to say it, right? Sexual misconduct, right? Have you had another experience that we didn't ask about that you would like to share with us, and then just give that open-ended? And then at the end of the survey, I think it's important to leave an option. Is there anything else that you would like us to know? Because that often gets some really, really good information.
If we ask qualitative information, Uh, who, will there be someone at the school that can interpret that? I can see quantitative, but qualitative, not always.
It's a little tricky because you want to put guidelines in saying, you know, if you share identifying information with us, we may need to act on that, right? So you need to have some kind of disclaimer in there. It's information that may be useful to the school, and it's an opportunity too for people to tell their story, which I think is honestly the bigger value in it. But it also, that's also a way of generating some pull quotes that that might help elucidate the reports.
I agree. I did it for my climate survey, but I didn't know if a lot of people did that. But okay, that is cool.
It does make me think also about, in the very least, because I really appreciate that question. Like at PCC, I will be one of the people probably who's reviewing it, right? Especially for any of that qualitative. So, or lately I've been missing those two up for some reason, just recently. So it makes me think of if there's any suggestions in the like packet, for lack of a better term, that we give to schools, that we talk about that a little bit, about the information that's gathered that isn't going to be as easily assessed, and give ideas of how they can use it or best way to understand it, if that's part of maybe what we provide to people as a tool, especially for smaller schools or schools that just have less folks with experience around this and so forth. And Martina, you just put a comment in the chat. The outreach committee? I love us not doing it, just for the sake of workload.
Yeah, that stuff, you can delegate that to them.
I think that's a great idea. Anything else about definitions, or just kind of the conversation we're having right now that we want to stick to for another moment before talking about kind of the review of the demographics aspect of the survey that we were planning on discussing today? Okay, not hearing anything from anyone. Y'all wanna, let's move to demographics. Ronan or Kevin, do either of you have a suggestion on the best way to review the documents we have? Sharing screen. Just I'm trying to think of the best way to kind of work off one document and talk as a group about this.
Well, do you all feel like sharing screen would be helpful? Because we can totally do that.
Alternate is just to put a link in the chat.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I think maybe sharing screen so that everybody's seeing the same thing it might be helpful. How do folks feel about that?
Yeah, I'm seeing
Okay.
a lot of.
I like it.
Okay, let me go ahead and I can share. I think I've got it up. Yeah. Okay.
And Martina, I want to honor, I appreciate you being here. You're welcome to stay for the whole meeting. I don't want to, but I also want to honor your time in case you didn't want to stick around. I'm not sure if we're going to have any more of the language committee aspects for these other sections.
If that's the case, I will. But you can also email me if for some reason something so language urgent comes up in the next half hour that you just absolutely have to get my answer. You can email me and I'll just sit here working on grant reports.
Does anyone else have any concerns with Martina jumping up early? In case I misspoke. Okay. Awesome.
Tiffany, did I see that you had uploaded some documents that had some different language?
Yeah, so I did, but then I downloaded that was off my phone. So then I went back into Basecamp and downloaded the demographic information and then put track changes and re-uploaded it.
Great.
So
Okay, so I'm looking at a Word document. So let me pull the, because I think, is the Word document in Basecamp? Because I just saw the PDF.
yeah,
Yes,
I
it
think
is.
I think it is.
Okay.
Yeah, I think
Okay.
it's in Basecamp and it has track changes because I think
Okay.
Bell added some things and I added some things.
Okay. Does this looks like it. Okay, hang on. I'm gonna stop sharing my screen and change screens. Sorry about that. It's yeah, okay, that's the right one. Great. Okay, cool. Okay. So I don't know how you want to go through it. Looks like age everybody is okay with. Are there any changes that people want to make to the age question?
Clarifying question, I guess. We've talked, it's come up around if we are going to allow folks who are under 18 to complete the survey. Do we need to talk more about that at this time or just wait until later?
I don't know if that's a question for the survey writing committee as much as for the outreach and implementation, just because it gets into confidentiality and IRB stuff, right?
Mhm.
A lot of the IRBs are not going to approve it if it allows for students under 18.
Okay.
But you might want to allow it, we might want to allow it as an option. I feel like that's one of the things that actually I'm hoping you will ask at the PIRC training on the 28th, how they handled that.
Okay.
Did you want them to put in their age or? Oh, you already said what is your age, free form. Never mind. Okay.
And then education status, is there anything in there okay, so age is approved, yay, okay. Education status, anything in there that folks want to change?
I think that, sorry, I'm just reading this because I don't think the notes I added are in here for some reason. I think maybe something got lost. If I'm just going off my memory, my only question was on this one. I'm thinking about community colleges and how to capture people who like we have a lot of students who aren't necessarily working on a specific degree, but they're doing adult basic education. They're doing ESOL classes, workforce development. And I know that we are a little unique in that, but I think about the community colleges across the state. So I'm wondering if there is another question we can ask that is a little like someone could add that into I am taking classes for another reason, but not everyone will think about connecting those two. So I'm wondering if there is a um, explicit question to make sure people see seen or can be captured there.
Yeah, how would you phrase that?
The first thing that comes to my mind, I really appreciate feedback, would be I am taking classes such as adult basic GED classes, basic education, English as a second language. I don't know if that's being too descriptive too for people for the sake of them being like, oh, I'm not in one of those classes, but that's at least those are some examples. Does anyone else have any other ideas or suggestions though?
But it wouldn't be captured in another reason?
Well, I
Free
just don't know
text?
that everyone will see themselves in that.
Mhm.
Like
Oh,
particularly like some of our ESOL students or our basic I just taking classes for another reason or for the personal or professional development. I feel like we just want to be really explicit so people can find themselves in it and still feel recognized as a college student. I'm just speaking from that community college lens. I think some of our adult learners don't always see themselves in higher ed the same way as four-year university students. So I just want to make sure
okay.
they feel seen in this so that they feel confident in then completing it.
Do you think maybe we could put in parentheses that information instead of it being a different blurb, but putting that information in the taking classes for personal and or professional development and then the ESL, GED, lifelong learner type
Yes,
as
like
okay.
such as or an
I like
example
that.
as.
That'll save
Yeah,
time. Yeah, lifelong
yeah.
learner, everything. Yeah,
Cool.
Okay.
Thank you everyone for talking through that.
yeah. So put a blurb there. Yeah. And I don't know if I see mine. I'll let you write this because I don't want to
Okay,
lose your train of thought.
okay. Yeah, this is the one that was on the in Basecamp, so I may not have everything up there. Okay. How's that, Caroline? Does that work?
Yeah. Thank
Okay.
you.
Did we put lifelong learner? Someone said lifelong learner that time.
Is there a hyphen in there?
I would think so, because that's one word. I mean, it's separate words, but we pronounce it as one. Yeah. I think I said, do we want to capture whether they are taking classes online or in classes? I don't know where to put that for its location, but I just thought that was missing because if someone doesn't have the experience and they're taking online classes, that could be the reason. I mean, I don't know, but it would, you don't want that to be, never mind. I think I put a link to the thing because there was someone like, that was online fully, on campus fully, and then both online and on campus. Those were the three choices that I saw. It was another survey that I put a link to, and I liked the way they phrased theirs. And I think it was, I'm just going by my memory, like online fully, on campus fully, and a mixture of online and on campus.
I don't, so one way to do it would just be select all that apply, but in terms of analysis, Adea, would it be easy, and this may be a question we need to further, is it easier to have it in person and online, like make that an option than have select all that apply
Yeah,
for
in
analysis?
person
Okay.
and
Just
online.
hybrid.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, hybrid. Or you could put in parentheses hybrid. Yeah, because it'll be their choice instead of our interpretation. So
Okay.
it's like, okay. And
Okay.
do we want to say that, do we want to quantify these things? Are you doing this, this past year? Because I would think sometimes you're in person, sometimes you're online. So for the past 12 months, have your classes, because this survey is over, their sexual harassment is over the past 12 months. Did we say that? Did we decide that? Or is it the past? I know we're going to ask their prior experience. I think we're going to ask their prior experience, but I thought it was going to be confined to their experience over the past 12 months, right? I may be wrong.
Right. And that's a really good question because it could be over the last 12 months or it could be since you started taking classes at this institution.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
We haven't discussed that,
We haven't
but I
discussed
don't know
that.
whether.
A follow-up question, Adea, could you share more with asking, are you currently taking classes, in person, online? What is our hope hope to learn from that particular question in relationship to the survey? I mean, is that, because that's not, as far as demographics goes, how will it inform us further?
I think we talked about that earlier. I forgot, but um, because that would kind of, I don't know if they're saying they've had this experience. I don't know. I guess, I don't know. I was just thinking we would want to know what type of student they are, because we are going to ask later on, where were they harassed? Was it online, or whether it was on campus or off campus location? So I just remember looking at a sexual harassment survey and that was on it. I can't think of why right now, why that would be the most important thing. But if every online student have a certain experience that, and on campus students have a certain experience, I would think that would be captured if all the online experience, they're not experiencing sexual harassment, maybe. I don't know. What do you
I,
think?
I can add to that because I think I'm really, really glad you brought that up, Adea, because thinking about it, Caroline, you know this, the schools just completed their reports. They are required to submit a report in October. And that report asks for, how many students have reported experiencing sexual misconduct in the last year. A lot of the smaller, like more technical schools said they had no students who were reporting misconduct. we didn't ask them if, how many of those, there's no place for them to talk about which student, do they do most of their programming online or in person. So allowing them to triangulate, right? So if I'm saying we don't have any reports and all of our classes and most of our students are saying that they're taking their classes online, you could then hypothesize that students who take their classes online experience less sexual misconduct than students who take their classes in person, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it allows the institution, because a lot of their institutions often get criticized when they don't have any reports, because it makes it seem like they're not open to accepting reports, or that they're discouraging people from reporting somehow.
Mm-hmm.
And so this might help explain why they weren't getting any reports if all of their students are online.
Awesome. Yeah, no, that's helpful. Thank you
okay.
for talking through that, both of you.
Yeah.
I appreciate that.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, so Tiffany, are these your changes in the sex and gender identity? Do you want to talk through those?
Yeah. I mean, looking at both of them, I thought condensing it down to one, I think that's why I moved the transgender female, transgender male. But cisgender female means you identify with your assigned gender at birth. Cisgender male, non-binary, agender, you don't identify with any gender, and then having transgender male and female, and then I like having the free text. And then obviously the prefer not to answer. So that's just kind of, I was looking over this along with the suicide prevention task force that I'm on, and we're doing a whole different thing, but just going over like the gender identity with my fellow community college students. So.
Yeah, and just to recognize that this language is constantly evolving and it's very cultural and very campus specific.
Right.
I've worked on campuses where we had to have that question, are you transgender? And they didn't want us to ask cisgender, because some people are like, I'm just female. I'm not cisgender, I'm not transgender, I just identify as female. And they wanted transgender out specifically because maybe I'm a transgender, if I'm a man who was assigned female at birth, okay, but I'm male. I'm not transgender, I'm male, right? Like I know myself to be male. So they wanted two questions there to give folks that option. I like using cisgender because I think it's helpful, but I wonder if we did something like female and then in parentheses, cisgender, or we could put, are you transgender or cisgender, and, allow people to say, I am transgender, I am cisgender, or, I am neither, I prefer not to answer.
Yeah,
It's
because not
tricky.
everybody is up with the language of cisgender.
Yeah.
They would just say female. I remember when I did my survey and we used cisgender male, and someone said other. And then when I looked at the free text, they said male. And I'm like, what the? Okay.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, no, that makes sense.
Mhm.
Yeah, absolutely. Then having it either like parentheses, that would make sense too, or yeah, the separate ones.
And then I wondered, did you also have, I thought in one of the things that I saw you upload, I saw Two-Spirit.
Yes.
And I felt like that
Yes.
was really important to have that in there. And in both sexual orientation and in gender, because it could be either. So I'm going to go ahead and add that if that's okay with you.
Yeah.
I'll just note I'm used to saying man and woman rather than female male. Does anyone have any thoughts or opinions about those?
I don't know if this is helpful, but I actually have a document pulled up. I attended a talk about like inclusive research methodology and how to gauge like certain demographic aspects like sex and gender. And at least in this talk, they talked about really being intentional in using terminology for gender, if that's what we're looking for. And they articulate that as man and woman, trans man, trans woman, gender queer, non-binary, whereas anatomical sex would be more female, male, intersex. So one thought I had is maybe reflecting man, woman, if we're trying to get at gender identity here.
Do you have that document pulled up, Lindsay? Is it okay? If I stop sharing, do you want to share it real quick?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay. I love this conversation, by the way. It's always so interesting. I always learn so much. It gets really complicated because we're talking about like such an essential part of someone's identity, right?
Can y'all see this?
Can you make it bigger?
That didn't change anything, did it?
I think you might need to open it.
See if my Google Docs will make it so the formatting isn't all weird.
Oh, thanks,
How's
Ethan.
that?
Yes.
Okay, awesome. So, and I'm happy to share this too. It's a little bit funky in this in Google Docs, which is how it had me open it, but there's an example. Oh shoot. Yeah, that might have been
Oh,
easier.
there you
How's
go.
that?
That's better. Yeah, that's
Okay,
better.
great. So this is the slide that I was mostly referring to. I'm happy to share the whole thing. But they sort of talk about these two different examples and how to frame these questions. Not sure if this is helpful or not, but this was kind of what I was going off of, and then making sure the not listed and the prefer not to reply is in there as well.
I don't know
I
if we
think
need
making
to.
the switch from the female male to man and woman, like we were discussing earlier, I feel great about that. I think so.
Yeah, I don't know if we need to, if we really, we don't really want to know anatomical sex, right? Like, what are we going to do with that?
Right, that's kind of what I was thinking. Yeah, I think gender, at least in my perspective, would be the thing that we would want to collect.
I'm going to go ahead and upload the document we were just looking. Oh, wait, we've still got a few more things. Sorry. Did they
Here,
also
I can
talk?
stop sharing.
No,
Oh,
wait.
go ahead,
Did
Rowan.
they talk about sexual orientation in this, or was this just specific to gender?
This was from what I remember, this was mostly specific to gender. They did touch on sexual orientation. They don't have any examples, but just being really intentional in asking that, because it can be uncomfortable for folks to disclose that even in an anonymous survey. But so just like more evaluating intentions as opposed to providing an example for that, was mostly how they touched on sexual orientation.
Mm-hmm. And there's a couple ways to think about sexual orientation too. So from a public health standpoint, when we asked about what we were interested in was not what their social identity was or personal identity, but who were they having sex with, right? So we would say, do you have sex with men or women or both, right? And then when we asked about if we wanted to know what social group do you identify most with, then we would ask, are you lesbian, are you queer or gay or whatever, right? So I think that's important. We don't really need to know who they're having sex with, right? We're more interested in how they identify themselves. Is that okay? Okay. If you can upload that to Basecamp, if that's all right, I think that would be really helpful.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm glad it's helpful. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm gonna stop sharing if that's
Okay. I'll
okay.
go back to the other document. Okay. All right. So we'll play around with that one a little bit more. So for sexual orientation, again, this is, and it says, which of the following best represents how you think of yourself? So we're not asking about behavior here, we're asking about identity. Were there any things that we should add or change in that list? Oh, I was gonna put Two-Spirit in. And are there, I don't know, I know Southwestern tribes. I don't know tribes in the Oregon, Idaho, this area. Are there other terms that are, and I can ask it, there's someone that I can ask at HEC about that, but are there other terms that folks might use, Indigenous folks around from this area? Okay.
Sabrina would know, but I don't.
Okay. Yeah, we have someone who's our tribal liaison at HEC, and so I can check in with them. But if you want to check with Serena, that would be great. Okay. And then race, ethnicity. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, I just said I will.
Thank you. Okay. Race, ethnicity, national origin. So this one is tricky because a lot of Latino people do not like the term Latinx, but white people in Oregon seem to really like it. So I don't know how you all feel about using Hispanic, Latino, or Spanish origin.
I'll note, I had another list I recommended. I do think that we might want to separate out a little bit some of these. I'll note that Latine with an E with an accent mark at the end is is founded within culture. So that is a more gender neutral term that was founded by um, Latinos or Latinx folks, whatever you want to say.
By some, right?
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
yeah.
So that is the
Yeah.
culturally specific
Yeah.
term. But you're right. Latinx people that was developed by white folks, I'm pretty sure.
Right.
So, but I did, I'm just gonna, it's not an all-inclusive list either, but I had another list just separating things out just a hair. I'm gonna put in the chat. I'm not attached, but just some ideas. Just put them in there.
I
Now, I
can't see.
want to mention, okay,
Go ahead, Adea, sorry.
I want to mention when I was surveying people about my survey, someone asked, why am I asking white? Because someone, let's say someone just got here from Ireland, they may just consider themselves European American. So why wouldn't you, if you're going to say Asian or Asian America, why wouldn't you say white or European American? And I didn't know how to answer her. So I changed my survey. So I was going to make you aware of that.
Right. So European or European American might, yeah. I think that makes sense. I can go ahead and change that one right now, but then Caroline, if you can upload that document, then maybe we can take a look at that too. Oops.
Well, it's just a list, and I'm not sure what happened because I uploaded a copy of things on this document that you're working off of right now. I uploaded with my comments and somehow it got lost. So I just put it in the chat. It's a list of some other ideas. It's just a little bit more expansive. And it specifically breaks out Asian and Asian Americans into more specific cultural groups or from areas of the world. And also when I'm also breaking out not just Black and African Americans, but African people as well. So I'm not sure if this is helpful. Just wanted to give some more, add to the identities a little bit more.
So could replace that.
And is this going to be a check all that apply? Is this a check all that apply?
Yeah, they can, select as many options as they want to. So, sorry, for East Asian, South Asian, or Southeast Asian, would that be Southeast Asian or East Asian American?
I know so I found this list and I really like the explanation of why it's really separating out folks with Asian descent. And I agree. I wasn't sure about the language so that we were honoring nationality as American as well. More than, so I don't know if anyone else has ideas. I mean, you just
like
put
that
American after each one of them.
Yeah, I really like that prefer to self-describe option too.
My only question is when we went to that meeting, And remember, she said when we have too many options,
Mhm.
that may be a problem. I don't know. Remember, she said to chunk some of the answers, choices. Um, do you think we'll have too many right here?
That's such a good question, right? Because we don't want to overwhelm people and give them like so many options that they're getting a headache trying to figure out how to answer this stuff. But at the same time, these questions serve as the gateway into the harder stuff. And I'm wondering if maybe, the idea here being that we see you, we want your particular identity is really, really important. And,
Mhm.
and so because honestly, most campuses are going to have to combine these, or most smaller campuses are going to have to combine these, right? Because if we have, just thinking about Reed or one of the smaller private colleges, you might have 4 Southeast Asian queer people, right? 2 of whom are male identified. So you know exactly who those people are in the data, right? Like it gets too much detail.
Mhm.
So you can't report on all these specific categories. In the implementation guidelines, one of the things we're going to need to talk about is when do you combine categories and how do you do that in a way that doesn't erase the experiences of the people in your groupings. And that is not my area of expertise. Okay, well, let's continue to play around with that a little bit. And then disability, are there any changes that folks want to make there? Okay. And then economic status, this one, what do you guys think? Like, how do you think we should, Caroline, you're grinning. Do you have...
Oh, no, yeah, it's wonderfully complicated. I know there's a lot of great comments. I really, I guess what I would start the conversation with, I appreciated, Rowan, you noted somewhere that like we can ask additional questions around, have you missed a meal this week? That kind of thing. I expanded that to like kind of be, uh, has anyone's housing been jeopardized? Due to an experience of sexual misconduct, realizing that potentially would come at a later date, right, or a later point in the survey, but that's kind of some of the stuff that came up for me. But I do think it'd be really helpful if we got to some of those questions around, like, have you been able to have all your meals? Are you concerned about being able to pay your rent? Like things like that. I think that'll help us understand where people are at a little bit more.
Could we have one question that sort of caught that precariousness, economic precariousness? Are any of the following statements true for you? I am worried about how I'm going to make rent this month. I have missed more than one meal in the last month because I didn't have money to buy food. I am worried about having enough money to get the medication or medical supplies that I need. Because we all worry about having enough money, right? But like the specific,
exactly.
So housing, food, medical, anything else that we could try and put a question in about?
I think that what you just named would be great, Rowan. What are other folks' thoughts?
Maybe adding transportation.
Yeah, transportation. Do you want it school related? Or do we have questions already about, I'm worried about being able to pay for my tuition, books. I think you do have that already. Never mind.
No, I don't think I do, actually. And I'll finish these up and then I'm just putting these in as notes for myself. Okay. All right. And then immigration status. I know Bill had some.
Sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Sorry, I just realized. So a couple more things around economics. Belle did have some comments specifically in there around if we wanted to ask a question about the highest level of education completed by your parents, if that helped, because that's just a pretty common question to understand economics. So that was one of Belle's ideas to explore it more. So I'm not sure if we want to chat about that. And then I have another comment about the housing status.
I looked at that when she said that,
Mm-hmm.
but I remember when I was 18, 19, I didn't remember the highest level my education my parents completed. That was not the topic of our discussion. But I thought you captured that about my family provides half or a full tuition and things like that. So it kind of family support and the ability to support probably could capture some of that.
I agree.
Well, not education wise, but financial stability or something.
The documents that are uploaded, I can see a lot of them. If you go to the like main page of the Sexual Misconduct Survey Council and you scroll down to the bottom, it says activity. And I can see a whole bunch of stuff that you all uploaded and like Belle uploaded that are missed. So I'm going to go through and pull this stuff from those documents and put them back into the main document that's currently uploaded. Okay, so we don't miss that kind of stuff and we can review it next time, since we're going to run out of time here real quick. Does that sound okay? Because there's so much good information there. I don't want to lose that. Okay. Okay, and then, yeah, and she also had a lot of stuff about immigration status, so, okay.
Yeah, I think F1 visa she had. I didn't know there were so many visas. I think I commented on, because she had an F1, which is a student visa, and a M1, which is a different type of student visa. And I was just saying, well, do we need to get that level of detail, or just say, do you have a student visa or another type of visa? Maybe something like that.
Yeah, I think again, it's about seeing people, and the J1 visas, and Caroline, you probably know this, but the J1 visas, if someone is a victim of sexual assault, there are people who are supposed to report that to immigration.
Oh, it is? Oh.
Yeah, like it can get, it was, so what we did at Reed was we just made sure that nobody who could get that information was a reporter. But it can get really kind of hairy. And again, seeing people. Okay. The IHE survey responses, I don't know that we have time to talk about that. So I'm going to ask people's permission to just give you a little bit of information. I have a couple of announcements that might be useful since we have like 3 minutes left. Okay, first, we are looking to, so most of the people who responded, there were 22 people who said, yes, I'll share information about whether or not we did a survey and which kinds of data programs we use to collect student information. And about half of them used Qualtrics, and then they were equally divided. Several of them used multiple platforms, but a lot of them used either Google Forms or Microsoft Office Forms, and then SurveyMonkey. So I'm wondering, we're going to try to get Qualtrics at HEC, because what we can do is maybe set up the survey in a couple of different platforms. So we could set it up in Qualtrics, and we could set it up like in Google Forms or something like that, and then make that available to the schools. So that'll be helpful there. There wasn't a lot of consistency in those folks who had done surveys. Several of them said that they had done self-drafted surveys, which I thought was interesting. Heads was the other one that I think more folks use, but there wasn't like a clear, we are all using this and this is really valuable. There are a couple of training opportunities that I wanted to share with you as well that I think might be, I just wanted to remind folks that we have that on Monday, the 28th, we've got that Prevention Innovation Resource Center training. And I think that's the one where we're going to be able to get some really, that's mostly for the implementation side, but I think it might be really interesting to talk to those folks. So I've got that in the chat. And then I'm going to put another training that's in the chat. This organization is out of Canada, and they do a whole bunch of different kinds of presentations. They've got some really great stuff on how disability affects people in intimate partner violence. And this particular one is about using trauma and violence-informed approaches, which is what they're calling trauma-informed, to the kinds of ethical situations that researchers face. And so we're not really researchers, but the people that we're working with, the schools are basically, this is conducting research, right? This survey is a form of research. So I thought it might be really helpful in helping us think about some of the ways when we do start talking, and again, maybe this is more implementation, but when we do start talking about to the schools about this stuff, we should be using trauma-informed language in the materials we give the schools to implement this, right? Because we want to be consistent there. So yeah, so I just wanted to let you know, especially for like students, if you're interested in this area, check out their website. They've got tons of recordings, some really, really good stuff. So yeah.
Okay,
Thank you.
Yeah. Are there any other announcements? You're muted.
Thank you. Do we need to take a moment to discuss what section we're going to cover next time of the survey so we can review and do notes and have a discussion on another area of the survey?
I feel like there's a lot of notes to like go over up higher too, so we could probably just skim through a little bit quicker and then stop down at the bottom right where we are because we haven't finished this section, right?
Okay, so for the next meeting, then we'll just focus on the demographics again.
I think so. I think that makes sense.
Okay.
And you'll also have the feedback. Hopefully, you'll have the feedback from the language committee on the definitions. So.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Is that something Ronan and Kevin can help us with to get it to them, or is there another way that we can make? Okay.
Yeah, we'll make sure they get it.
Okay. Thank you. So should I call this meeting to an adjournment? Okay. I will adjourn the meeting. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Caroline.
Bye.
Bye, folks. Take care.